So when you shoot a gun, there's many noises coming together. Even the sight of the gun could make dog to be gun shy, right? So we start with the sight of the gun. Then when you rack, let's say, handgun, that noise. Then we have when you even click the safety off, that little click. I've seen dog completely flip because of that, because they know what's coming. Yeah. And then you have, you pull the trigger and the gun fires, and you have the explosion of the, the slide of the handgun goes back and forth. That makes noise. Okay. And then you have the bullet hissing through the air, hitting the ground or wall or something over there. So that it's a complex thing. So when when you're practicing for gunfire, you cannot just use blank gun, because a lot of those noises are not there, like the bullet hissing through the air. There's not in blank gun, right? So you gotta make sure the dog is good in all of that stuff. And in thunder, it's different again. You have a lightning, and then a few seconds later, you have the clap, the thunder clap. And in fireworks, you have the lights, and all that. So every one of those is a little different composition of noises, of sounds, and or even views, right? Looking, sight, So when you have, so let's start with the gunfire, right? Or let's just focus on gunfire. When you focus on gunfire, you start. I've done it many times. Let's say I'm raising puppies and they're gonna go to law enforcement. Or you can do it with all puppies or protection. And I forgot one important sound, which I'm gonna use now. When the bullet is flying through the air, right? It goes through a sound barrier. Not all of them, but most of them, or a lot of them, go through the sound barrier. You have subsonic and bullets which go below sound barrier, and then you have bullets which go through sound barrier. And that crack, which you hear when you fire a gun, it's actually not the explosion, but it's the bullet breaking the sound barrier like a jet. It's the same thing. And so, every gunfire, you can, not every, but most of the gunfire have that. Right, so I get the dog desensitized to that, or actually I condition them with classical conditioning, that's a good thing, right? In other words, there's no negative connotation with that. And what I do, I take a buggy whip or an agitation whip, and I pop it, pop, pop. And what do you think that sound which the whip does is that the tip of the whip goes so fast through the air, if you do it right, that it breaks a sound barrier. That the tip of the whip, you're like Chuck Yeager, man. You cracking the whip and you're breaking sound barrier, right?
Where that sound comes from.
And that's where that sound comes from, right? So what I used to do with little puppies, I would, and I do more than that. I also do come at the same time, right? I say, kemnie, which means come, and then I go pop, pop, pop with the whip. And then I feed them. So they don't think pop, pop is anything bad. And besides that, they learn to come, right? That's one of the ways you can teach come, but that's not part of this thing, right? So that's one way to do it. And then you can use, the new add-on. So you can also make a dog gun shy. People say, well, it's genetic. I don't think there is a gene for gun shyness, if you ask me, right? I don't think Mother Nature or God or whatever you believe just created dogs with gene for gun shyness, right? It's a certain sensitivity, and you can make dog to be gun shy, right? You have a dog and you take a double barrel shotgun when he sleeps and shoot over his head. You're gonna make him gun shy. I'm exaggerating for effect, So don't do that, right? So you're introducing, I do that thing with the buggy whip, right? Pop pop, and that's the sound barrier breaking, but that's not all of it, right? And then I start adding on it, right? So I can use a quiet blank gun. I use cap gun, like with the paper caps, and that deals with the cocking and the explosion of that little cap. And I start with little tiny sounds, right? But they're same type of sounds like the explosion in a handgun, but they're really small, quiet, much quieter noises. And I do it from the distance. So I shoot it from the distance, right? And then I go feed the dog, right? And then I keep coming closer and closer and closer. And then I use more loud blank gun, and then I might start using live gun 22, 45, 9 millimeter. I know 45 is bigger caliber than 9 millimeter, but 45 doesn't go through sound barrier, most of them, and 9 millimeter, most of them do get through sound barrier. So shooting 9 millimeter is usually much more painful for the ears than 45, right? And I slowly, by far distance getting closer and noise from being quieter to louder, I introduce the dog to the noises of the gunfire, and then so the dog becomes familiar with it and just doesn't really care, right? And that's the best way to start the dogs, right? Of course, you may have a dog which already is gun shy, right? So now what do you do with that, right? It's kind of, you can do what I just said, with the buggy whip and stuff, but once the default is there, it's really hard to break it. So the main thing is try not to make the dog gun shy. And people banging dishes around puppies and all that. Don't do that. Yeah, you can scare some puppies and some you don't, but it doesn't. You just introduce them to the noise. That's what dog trainers do. You don't only want to train dogs who have less problem with certain situations or noises. You got to be able to train any dog, right? So I take the little more sensitive dogs who may have a little more sensitive hearing, and I train them that way, right? So and they could be just as good dogs, sometimes better than the ones which are, not sensitive. The dog. I remember I talked to Yuri a lot about this, and he says the apathetic dog is like the useless, the worst dog. You may have a dog who doesn't give a damn by anything, and gunfire or nothing, it's just like laying on the couch and you can and the dog doesn't react. So the dog who doesn't react is actually useless. I mean, as far as a protection dog is, it may be okay for you if you just want to pet something, but you can get a stuffed one for that,